In this video, I'm going to show you how to establish instant credibility as a brand new podcaster. Because one of the biggest struggles people face when starting something new, including a podcast, is imposter syndrome. Well, I'm going to show you why you don't need to deal with that anymore, and you don't need to question as to whether or not people find you credible. Take, for example, if you've ever been sitting in an audience or listening to a podcast or a YouTube video, somebody talking, and you've asked yourself, why am I even listening to this person? Or I don't know if I believe this person. I'm not sure they're really credible or if they're telling the truth. I don't know that I believe them. Well, there was a reason you felt that way. And it was either because you have a good intuition and discernment, or the person talking did not establish the two things I'm about to tell you that you need to establish if you want to have instant credibility, instant undeniable credibility with the people you're talking to on your podcast. I'm Brian Fleming, the host of the Podgasm Marketing Podcast, where I teach you how to craft a clear and compelling message for your podcast brand so your podcast will continue to grow. And by the way, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go download the free Speak Your Listener's Language PDF. It's a very short, simple PDF that shows you a few key questions you need to answer in order to establish instant credibility with your audience and craft a very clear and compelling message that attracts the right people to your podcast so your podcast will continue to grow. If you haven't grabbed it yet, why not? It literally tells you how to start crafting a clear, compelling message for your podcast. So go get it at podgasmshow.com, or you can get it right here by clicking the link in the description. So how do you establish instant credibility with people if you're brand new to something? Or maybe your podcast has been up for a few months or maybe a year, but you still feel like you're new. How do you establish instant credibility? And here's the reason why it's important. People will listen to you more and they'll engage with you more. They'll buy from you more when they know and believe that you are credible in what you're talking about. And you have to do the work, which is actually not a lot of work at all. It's very simple. I'm about to show you what it is, of doing that and establishing that credibility. These two questions change everything when you just know to integrate them into your messaging, whether it's your podcast titles, your descriptions, or how you talk about yourself briefly in your podcast episodes, letting people know that you actually know what you're talking about. These two questions are simple, and they're going to change everything for you when you integrate them into your podcast brand and marketing messages. So the first thing you have to establish with your listeners is connection. Connection. All right, this is very simple, but we often overlook it. People are asking themselves a question in their heads every time they hear people talk, including you. They're asking the question, why is this person like me? Why does this person understand me? Why does this person know what it's like to be in my shoes and understand my struggles and how it feels to be me and to go through the things I've gone through and to be where I am? How are they telling me that they know what I'm feeling? You see, it's your job to make sure that people understand that you are just like them. That's the big thing in establishing this first piece, the connection. Making your audience understand by telling them very simply and clearly why you are just like them. For example, when I used to speak to the military a lot, doing resilience training for soldiers and service members coming home from deployment, I would get up and I would give 45 and 60-minute speeches talking about resilience and winning the war at home and dealing with mental health issues. But you know, one of the biggest things I had to establish very early on in that speech, as well as in my bio that they all read, a lot of them read before they saw me speak, they had to understand why I'm even standing up there. Why am I even talking to them? Well, when I get up and I say, I'm Brian Fleming, and I served as a team leader in an infantry platoon fighting the ground war in Afghanistan. In fact, at one point, I was even awarded a Purple Heart for being wounded in action by a suicide bomber who tried to kill me in Kandahar. That actually happened, by the way. And once I say that, instantly, everyone in the audience, all these soldiers and service members, they go, okay, he's just like me. He knows what it's like to be in that stuff. He knows what it's like to deploy and to live that life. I have probably 50% buy-in that I didn't have before I said those couple of sentences. All right, I established a connection about why I'm just like them. So think about it in your podcast. What are you saying in your messaging, as well as throughout your podcast episodes, that establishes and lets your listeners know that you're just like them? And the second piece is called credibility. There's connection and credibility. Anytime you've been sitting in an audience, whether it's a college classroom, a keynote speech, listening to a podcast, whatever, and somebody's teaching something, you want to know that who you're learning from actually knows what the hell they're talking about. Because let's face it, with podcasts and the internet and YouTube, not everybody who teaches things knows what they're talking about. And you have to let people know you're different. You actually do know what you're talking about. Because here's the question in everyone's head that they're asking as they're listening to your podcast. They're asking this question: why should I listen to this person? Why should I take your advice? Why should I listen to you? You have to answer that question without them realizing they're even asking it. You have to build it in, again, into your brand messaging, where it belongs. And that's why I teach people how to do this, and I do it for them. I'll tell you more about that later. But you have to answer the question, why should I listen to this person? Why should people be listening to you on your topic of your podcast? Now, with the credibility piece, let's say I was still speaking to the military on resilience. I came home injured from the war in Afghanistan. I spent a year and 2 months at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas. Burn treatment, reconstructive surgery, mental stuff, the psychological stuff I had to work through. Not only that, but I held my marriage together. I've been married almost 19 years now, and I got married 3 months before I deployed to the war in Afghanistan. Not only that, but I started a business after getting out of the military. I became a professional speaker, and I've spoken all over the world. I built a very productive, profitable life for myself. Not only am I still married, but I'm making a great living doing something that helps people. I moved forward in life productively, and I was able to overcome a lot of the battles that I fought after coming home. I even wrote a book on it called Redeployed: How Combat Veterans Can Fight the Battle Within and Win the War at Home. I co-authored that with a buddy of mine who did like 9 or 10 or 12 tours in Afghanistan. Instant credibility. I've lived it, number one. Number two, I wrote a book on it, and you don't have to do that, but you just have to somehow establish in people's minds that you know what you're talking about. You've lived it somehow. You have some sort of credibility. Maybe it's your initials behind your name with a certification or a PhD or something you've actually done, or it's even other people who are highly credible and known in your industry saying great things about you. These all build your credibility. So again, 2 things to establish instant credibility as a new podcaster: connection and credibility. People are asking themselves, as far as connection, why are you just like them? You need to answer that question. And secondly, the credibility piece. Why should I listen to you? Prove to them why they should listen to you, why you have good, credible advice they can take, and it's not going to make them bomb. It's actually going to help them move forward in the direction they're trying to go. Now look, I understand you're not a copywriter, a professional speaker, but if you want to work one-on-one with me and have me write all your brand messaging for you, I take on a few clients a month, just very few, because it's a lot of work for me to do, but I love doing it. And I'm not for everybody, by the way. I don't work with everybody. But if you're interested in working with me and having me rewrite all your brand messaging for you, doing all the mental work and the writing and all that, so you don't have to, and I can clarify your marketing and brand messaging for your podcast so that when the right people see it, they know it's for them, and it makes them want what you're talking about, and they want to subscribe and listen, which allows you to monetize your podcast, make money off it, grow your audience. Look, if you don't have a clear, compelling message for the right people, your podcast is not going to grow. That's one of the biggest reasons podcasts die. So look, send me an email right now at podgasmshow@gmail.com if you want to ask a couple of questions, see if I'm available, and possibly work with me. I'm glad to look at what you're doing and see if I can help you grow your podcast.